policy board is one of those that's easy to have online. The tech highway is nice to meet in person.
Yeah, I think after the meeting, Scott and I talked about stuff. Just stuff going on, the district, etc. We have a lot of Yeah. Yeah. Do you remember Amy Bishop? Yeah. I didn't know that.
I thought just
Yeah.
in case try. I was gonna say it's easier to do that than most days. How are
She
you?
retired.
Is this for grabs too?
Yeah, it's the physical copy of what they're gonna show, so if there's anybody that you know that can't make it, that wants to see it.
She just,
Hey, how are you?
she's been talking about it.
Does it look like this? They probably have one on both ends, yeah. You're good, you're good.
Yeah. How are you?
Pretty good. You have to sign in. All right, I have to sign in for you.
How's it going?
You're gonna post this on Facebook.
Brian, we're killing it. We're killing it. Good turnout.
There's
I know Cobra's been here.
oh, I know. Friday night. I don't know if you saw this or not. Friday night they're having something.
Yeah, even down in Pain, I know.
Just got that today. It's like, are you kidding? Okay, that's like the third thing on my calendar. Yeah, the first one's taking precedence over. And it's but we were in Attica on Monday and we got to see Johnson. Food.
Did you see Cobra when he was here?
We did. He was
I was thinking.
halfway done with that one over on Romeg.
Oh.
It was looking so
I'm gonna marry. All you guys are gonna do it all, basically.
Ryan Dix just
So I'm here about your staff. So that, my impression. Right. Letting us.
Did you hear that?
Yeah, I mean, it's really great to talk about projects. Seem to really, I'm really glad about that. Well, yeah, when I started here, I thought he wasn't. It was paid.
All right, everyone, we're going to get started in just a few minutes. And please make sure before you leave to sign in the sign-up sheet at the front of the room. And be sure to take one of the handouts of the maps. It has a way to contact us directly, as well as there's a link to the survey if you wish to fill that out when we are finished here this evening. All right, we can begin. So I just want to say good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for attending tonight's presentation. We're going to be sharing information about the Big Four Trail Master Plan. We're currently in the draft plan phase, and if this is your first time joining us at a public forum for this particular project, don't worry. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to gather public input, and that is exactly what we're going to do here in just a few minutes. The agenda for tonight starts off with a PowerPoint, followed by general questions and answers. And then the design team up here with me, we're going to facilitate breakout sessions. And you can see across the room, there are several maps posted on the easels throughout, and each of us will facilitate each of those, and we'll be able to answer any questions you may have or look at the map in a greater detail. So we're really, really excited that you all are here. I'd like to take a few minutes to introduce the design team. My name is Jessica Nix. I'm a landscape architect and the project manager for this plan. Next to me is Ryan King, also a landscape architect and the project designer. We're with the engineering firm Butler, Fairman, and Seifert. We're located in Indianapolis. We also have an office here in Lafayette. Our firm partnered with Health by Design, and they work at the intersection of the built environment and public health. And with them is Marjorie Hennessy, sitting over here. And she is the active living program manager for Health by Design. And our firms were hired by the community to develop this master plan. And this plan is going to be used as guidance for future trail development across the entire county. So these next few slides, I'm going to talk to us. Yeah, I'm still not in the frame. Sorry. All right. Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about project background information, which will help kind of tie all the pieces together before we jump right into the trail plan itself. We're using the term Big Four, and maybe some of you are wondering, where does that term come from? Well, it actually comes from the Cleveland, Cincinnati, Chicago, St. Louis Railway. And this was back in the mid-1800s, and even back then they thought that was a really long name and shortened it, as you could see on the advertisement on the screen, Big Four, related to the Big Four cities at that time. And the particular segment that we're focused on used to connect Lafayette to Indianapolis. And that route was active in the mid-1800s and was left abandoned in 1976. And around this same time, in 1960s, the Rails to Trails movement was born. And our neighbors to the south, Zionsville, Lebanon, Thorntown, and Colfax, have began reclaiming this abandoned railroad and converting it into trails for public use. This leads us to the project goal. So what is the main purpose of this master plan? Our overarching goal is to eventually in the future to connect Indianapolis to Lafayette via the Big Four Rail Trail. As I said earlier, our neighbors in Clinton County and Boone County have already developed trail routes that are following along this exact abandoned railroad. And there's currently over 30 miles of trail in the ground, represented by the solid red line in the graphic on the right. And the dotted line represents the missing gaps, the missing links in the overall regional trail. And Tippecanoe County's part will help close in on that gap and brings us one step closer to achieving this connection. And to help support the project goal, we've identified several project objectives, and first and foremost is safe walking and biking options. This trail is going to be a separated route from the roadway. Not only does one feel safe when you're on a separated trail, it eliminates the amount of times the pedestrian and the vehicle will interact in the same space. We're also planning to connect multiple communities. So not only is this trail going to serve greater Lafayette, it's also going to connect to the communities in rural Tippecanoe. After the adoption of this plan, we plan on seeing an increased amount of physical activity and an overall improved health not only physically, but mentally as well. Trails are a perfect opportunity for us to kind of slow down from our busy lives and connect with nature. Lastly, we plan on seeing an enhanced economic development in the communities that this trail is going to impact. Not only does it provide an aesthetic value, it's going to provide an economic value to those communities. Many studies have shown increased property value to homes that live in neighborhoods near these types of trail networks. New businesses are attracted to communities with trail networks. Not only is it a source of leisure, but it is a source of commute for their employees. So if you want to think about the Monon Trail in Broad Ripple, over the past several decades, many businesses have sprouted up along this trail segment and have really done well because of the amount of foot traffic that they see day in and day out. Now, this graphic represents the design phases that we have followed to get to where we're at today. We're currently in the draft plan phase, and specifically the public input session. Throughout this entire process, we've been working hand in hand with an advisory committee, and they've been really important in providing information and feedback from a local standpoint to help develop this trail and help us designers understand what will work best for this community. So from the public information, that the input that we get this evening from you all in the audience, we're going to apply that and incorporate that into the final plan, which will then be adopted in the various communities across the county. And that's going to be used in their comprehensive plans for future trail development. And lastly, before we talk about the trail itself, I want to touch base upon what this master plan is going to provide and what it's not going to provide. There are no construction plans and property acquisition as an immediate result of this study. So by definition, a master plan is considered a living document. As the community grows and expands, this plan too can change even after its completion. And there's many design and build takes a lot of time and planning. And there's many factors that come into play when determining when a project or a specific trail segment goes under construction. What this master plan is going to include is the proposed infrastructure of the trail and supporting details. Along with that, cost estimates with trail segments. As you can imagine, a countywide trail is going to be very long and would be very difficult to complete all at one time. So dividing up into more manageable segments for the community will make it easier for them to apply and obtain funding to support the engineering, design, and construction in the future. All right. And on the screen, it shows the overall Big Four trail route, and it is currently in the draft. And I think all of you also have handouts, so it might be better to view it in those handouts there. And so the trail, it's highlighted in the blue line. In the southern portion of the county, the trail is going to be following along the abandoned railroad ballast through Clarks Hill and Shaneland. Once it gets into the southern city limits of Lafayette, that rail line becomes active again. So we're going to have to utilize the existing trail networks and future plans for infrastructure improvement to navigate this trail through Lafayette, to reach West Lafayette and north towards Battleground. The direction of the route in the northern half of the county heading towards Delphi, that is influenced by the Indiana Visionary Trails Plan, and that was developed by the Department of Natural Resources. And that plan is a proposed statewide trail map, and so that will definitely help direct that specific segment in obtaining funding for the future and having that reinforcement by DNR. And now I will hand it off to Ryan King, and he's going to explain the route details and finish us off.
Thank you. So I'm Ryan, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about the details that we have planned for the Big Four, and specifically, I want to show some of the conceptual alignments through the towns that we're going to be connecting, specifically south and north of Lafayette and West Lafayette. So connecting a regional trail like this is going to have major impacts on these towns, and I have examples in your handouts of Battleground, Stockwell, and Clarks Hill, and then as well the north end of the Wabash Avenue neighborhood. We want to make sure that these communities have a thoughtful plan in place to ensure that they get a quality route that benefits them and the people that live there. We want to make sure that they're safe and they have the best potential to work as a new amenity for those communities. So starting at the south end, Clarks Hill, approximately 20 miles south from downtown Lafayette. This is the southernmost destination in Tippecanoe County and the farthest from Lafayette. So even though it's 20 miles away, it's only 4.5 miles away from Colfax and Clinton County. And that's where there's actual Big Four trail alignment on the ground. Stockwell, just 3.5 miles north of Clarks Hill, is the next community, and that puts both Colfax, or Stockwell, and Clarks Hill within a 30-minute bike ride of the Big Four trail as it stands right now. So in Clarks Hill, the trail alignment that we have proposed uses the existing rail corridor south of White Street, comes next to the fire station and an existing park. Those would both be great connections to have. And then coming along White Street, that street's fairly wide. There's enough right-of-way there to make this a safe pedestrian crossing and multi-use trail. And then heading north along Clark Street through a small residential area, back through an existing easement and onto the rail corridor again once to the north. So we have connections to parks, playgrounds, and local businesses all through Clarks Hill, and we think that that is a good checkbox in each one of those categories for bringing a regional trail through an area like this. To the north of Clarks Hill, we hit Stockwell, and again, we're using the rail corridor line with some minor adjustments on to some of the major streets to get around intersections. There's going to be some topography south of Monroe Street that's going to need to be dealt with. The rail corridor bed has severely sunken in that area, and then there's some developments that have taken place within the railroad right-of-way. So a couple intersections here, and then connections to downtown businesses again and residential areas. And again, I think this alignment hits a lot of the check boxes that we look for in connecting to these communities. Lafayette and Lafayette are the centrally located amenities in Tippecanoe County that we're trying to link. Both cities have extensive bike and pedestrian planning, as well as the Wabash River Enhancement Corporation's master plans for this area. They have an upper, central, and lower reach master plan, along with a few others that really focus on the Wabash River corridor through these cities. And we really want to take advantage of the work and schematic design that's been done in those plans and make sure that our plan matches with what's already been planned. So these lines on this map are two options that we see at one area where we know that there's going to be some really big decisions that need to be made, and that's leaving, as you can see here, north is to the right to help you orient, but leaving the Wabash Avenue neighborhood to the north, either on Sycamore Street or Wabash Avenue, to cross the railroad tracks to make it to the depot, to tie in with the Heritage Trail and the depot and the pedestrian bridge. To the north of Lafayette, West Lafayette, is Battleground. So this one, the alignment here would follow River Road north of West Lafayette along an existing trail that gets you to Happy Hollow Road. And then beyond that, there are existing plans ongoing and in place that show an extension of that trail to the north, heading to Battleground and Prophetstown State Park, and then off Pretty Prairie Road towards Delphi. So I think all of these small communities that we've highlighted have opportunities for great connections through their downtown areas, opportunities to accommodate a trail through their urban areas, provide streetscapes and road diets, and mesh with the existing master plans. So just for a quick recap before we do a quick question and answer, connecting Tippecanoe County from north to south along the Big Four Rail Trail, using the abandoned corridor where it's available, and using the alignments developed in existing master plans where that's available. We want to take advantage of existing trails and upcoming projects throughout Lafayette and West Lafayette, including roadside trails and ditch improvements and everything that's on their development list as well. As a part of this plan and all of this alignment, we're going to identify phasing and conflicts, funding opportunities, and what priorities each community has. And then we're going to use this master plan as a living document to help guide future development, as Jessica said. Is there anything else you want to close out with, or are we ready to? I think we're good. Yeah. So our contact information is up here along with the survey link. This should be on your handout as well. So feel free to ask any general questions about our process, how we got here, what our next steps are, and then we can break out and answer some more specific questions at each of the boards here after we finish the general Q&A. So thank you.
Do you have a timeline for any of these projects? Is it 1 year, 5 year, 10 year?
For the master plan being complete or for a project being constructed?
The dotted line she showed in the early picture, the whole project, yeah.
Yeah. That is really up to the communities along that route to get funding and design and engineering plans ready to go to construction. There are annual cycles for funding opportunities, so if plans are ready, they give money out to shovel-ready plans pretty readily. But there's nothing planned in the next year or two to be constructed as of right now. Yeah.
You're actually tied to rails and trails? You had mentioned that. Probably you mentioned that. Trails, is that just once again a cooperation of, are they already making a trail, or do they already have plans?
Oh, so the Rails to Trails Corporation, doesn't necessarily have an affiliation with this particular project, but we're just following along suit with their legacy of obtaining land from the abandoned railroads and converting it into trail for public use. We're not, we're not competing. No, it's definitely a partnership for the better good of the entire community.
The part in Lafayette area, there's a Wabash Heritage Trail that goes to Battleground from downtown Lafayette.
Mm-hmm.
So that looks like you're on the opposite side of the river. Was there a reason for trail access or floodplain or any of the multiple issues?
Yes, definitely. Well, our main focus was to be able to connect West Lafayette as well. So if we were to stay on the east side, we would then neglect connecting and linking all of those communities that flow along and are near the Big Four, the original Big Four corridor.
I had a question. You kind of hit on timing. It's hard to judge overall timing, but you do have a draft plan stage and a final plan stage. Mm-hmm. What's your timeline on those two?
So the final plan will be wrapped up at the end of September, and after that we will work with our advisory committee and as when to plan the presentations for council, any park board, whatever their process is to adopt a plan such as this. So after that, within the next few months, you could see that being part of the city's plans.
Have you had any consideration of like the section of corridor Clarksville, Stockwell? Have you checked on ownership of that, or what thoughts have you had on how that would be completed?
So, ownership of the rail corridor is our first recommendation for all of these communities to do, is to figure out who exactly is the current owner and what restrictions may or may not be on that abandoned rail line. Some of the information in the Beacon system, which is their GIS system for the county, is no information available. So it's probably going to have to be looked up the old-fashioned way on a hard paper file to figure out who exactly is the owner. But the parcel lines are still there, the property lines are still there, the railroad ballast is still there. So there's a lot of good indicators that it's still available and not being used. So property acquisition, or at least getting a determination of who the current owner is probably step number one.
And did the ownership of Boone County and Clinton County sections, does that ownership end at Clarksville?
It would most likely probably end at the county line. South of Clarks Hill is Clinton County, and the closest community is Colfax. And I do know that they are in talks of planning extending the trail north from. They're actually constructing the southern portion of the trail from Colfax to Thorntown this summer, and they're talking about completing that route heading north to the county line. And as far as ownership goes, that would most likely go to Clinton County, and then it stops there, and then it transfers to Tippecanoe County, and then whoever owns those parcels within that railroad right-of-way.
Does all that work go to the county as a place to do, or is that part of this plan at all, any of that investigation into who owns, or the plan will just say, that's a good idea, go figure it out, or?
We repeat the questions so that they can hear us online.
Oh, yeah, I can say that. Well, I now forgot. Yeah, go ahead.
For those online, his question was, whose job and at what point are we going to investigate property ownership along this rail line? And that's not a part of this plan, but that's going to be individual communities' first step when they go to design. That'll be right-of-way engineering and part of the survey process as well. Sorry.
Oh, you're good.
Yeah.
I have several questions. First of all, have you made a recommendation on what kind of surface the trail's going to have? Is it going to be a crushed rock or asphalt?
It'll most likely, so the question was what type of surface material will be used for the trail, and we recommend using asphalt. So it'll be easy to use for cyclists and walkers and everyone in between.
Okay, I guess another recommendation I would have is it looks like some of the plans you have are going to really take years, probably decades to accomplish. So I would just recommend that in the meantime, try to designate some roads that have decent shoulders so that someone could complete the route without having to wait until the last bit of trail is done. And secondly, or lastly, has anybody thought about making the connection between this trail system and the Monon Trail, which goes north to Sheridan?
I believe, I'm trying to remember exactly where the Zionsville Big Four Trail leaves off. I do think it's a little ways off of the Monon route, but it's not too far, and we'll have to investigate that a little bit further.
That's a very extensive trail system. Connect them just with with some kind of connection that would really very.
Absolutely. Yeah. Excellent. Yes.
You mentioned asphalt, but would there be any berm or any consideration for runners and those who like a softer surface?
Yes, absolutely. So a softer surface such as kind of gravel rock or just soft earth, is that what you're recommending for the shoulders?
It could be earth, it could be like an 11 or 12 fine.
Yes.
Something that runners, some walkers who have knee problems want softer surfaces than a hard asphalt.
Yeah, definitely. We'll definitely include that in our recommendation for the trail materials and what can be used on the shoulders for sure. Thank you. We haven't identified that, the river flooding exactly, the level.
That is, I think, part of Wabash River Enhancement Corporation's plans
Mm-hmm.
in their master plans, and then the alternate routes is what we've talked about.
Rounds, okay.
Yeah.
So you can take that. Thank you.
So the question for those online was considerations towards flooding of the trail in high water events. So there are multiple trails along the river, and there would most likely either be a trail closed or a trail detour for high water events. I think a couple options now in like the Wabash Avenue neighborhood, a trail along Sycamore Street, which is the closest to the river, would be an option. And then in high water events, push those users up to Wabash Avenue, the main thoroughfare street through the neighborhood. So options like that would be considered. And then if worse comes to worse, a trail closed sign, if it's underwater, don't try to traverse it.
Yeah, good recommendation.
A couple questions. As we head across the river on the pedestrian, it looks like it heads all the way straight up to River Road.
Mm-hmm. Correct, yes. Mm-hmm. It'll be on State Street, and then it'll turn north on River Road, continue on the existing trail route up until Happy Hollow, and then
There is no trail between where State Street crosses, or intersects River Road. There is no trail. I've seen it on certain maps, but there is none.
okay.
Just FYI, there is a trail that goes along the river and meets up, and it's actually quite a nice section of trail,
Mhm.
in that it goes by an area where eagles are often seen burrowing there. So you might reconsider that. The other question, and because that's the route that people take to go up and take the trail that is along, that goes up to Happy Hollow.
Mhm.
Because that trail starts at Robinson. You have to cross the street there, and it's kind of sketchy right now. But you should consider using the actual trail that exists. And it doesn't flood too much of it, except at the very bottom.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Jessica, I have an online question.
Okay.
Would the stretch of trail along the river and River Road between West Lafayette and Battleground be in the road or a trail separated from traffic?
Okay. So the question was, will the trail on River Road between West Lafayette and Battleground be
On the road?
on the road or a trail separate? So we propose that the entire route of the Big Four is going to be a separated trail, the entire length. So yes, it will be separated from the roadway in that particular segment.
How much separation are you talking about?
In certain areas, so how much separation? In certain areas, it will definitely depend when we're in the more congested areas. There might be only a curb and gutter as a separation when we get really tight with the existing right-of-way available instead of encroaching onto someone's property, which I know that could be not everyone's favorite thing to do, so in those certain cases, keeping it close to the roadway as possible, but we also have to consider this, the posted speed limit of the roadway. If it gets above 45 miles an hour, it's recommended to have at least a 10-foot separation, which is a pretty big, wide separation. So that'll just have to be addressed case by case. And when the community is looking to develop that particular segment, when they get into the engineering, right-of-way, and survey, they're going to address all of those concerns for sure.
So how is it written in stone that you're going up River Road?
This entire project is not written in stone. So it is able to change. If few years down the road, new infrastructure comes or new roadways are developed and maybe certain segments don't apply anymore, the city officials that have a hold of this report can look at the surrounding areas and determine what would be the best alternate route. So this is a living document and can change in the years and decades to come. Thank you.
Having ridden on a bunch of trails, it's my impression that, maybe 4 or 5 years after they're built, the tree roots start encroaching on them and they start breaking up the pavement, and it seems like a lot of these jurisdictions don't have big maintenance budgets. So are you gonna recommend anything to mitigate that?
Good question as far as maintenance. The question was about maintenance on trails in the years to come, and we'll definitely have recommendations as far as that moving forward. So the communities are prepared to take on the responsibility for taking care of this public right-of-way.
Your recommendation to the communities to have parking areas next to the trail, or restroom next to the trail, potentially water. It gets pretty remote.
Absolutely. So we will recommend locations for trailheads, and we can, in a minute when we do our breakout sessions, we can speak with you individually, and you can suggest the best locations for that, and we can discuss that further. So that's a really good suggestion. All right. I think that ends our general question and answers. So if you guys want to stick around, the design team is going to be posted up at each of the maps around the room, and we can break up into smaller groups, and we can talk further and answer your if you have other questions in greater detail. So thanks again for coming tonight. We really appreciate it.
Remind them about the survey.
The survey. Oh, and also please fill out the survey. We would really like that. Thank you. All right. All right. Since we have a big group, we might need your help. I know.
No, totally.
And
I was just going to wait and see
okay.
who sticks around. And I tried to get most of the questions down.
Oh, this is
No, I'll just.
I did not bring any paper.
I will.
I've been writing on it.
I tried to type